everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight and joining us. Our first presenter is Tobiah Morris. He is a game evangelist here at Microsoft, and he's also an indie developer. If you've ever played Blastfunk, he's responsible for it. And that was at one time the #1 Android game in the market. So, without further ado, Tobiah Morris.
Hey. Can everybody hear me okay? Is my door working? I got to turn up the volume. Alright, everyone hear me okay? No? Yeah? Okay. So, hey, I'm Tobiah, as Andrew said. I work here now as Microsoft as the game evangelist. Cool title, right? But basically my job is to help out developers however I can, focusing in gaming, because that's where my background was. Before I started here at Microsoft, I ran companies for 4 years. Last Monkeys, as Andrew mentioned, is a physics-based puzzle game where you shoot a monkey out of a cannon and into bananas. It was #1 Android game for a while in 2011. I stopped keeping track of downloads in early 2012 after we passed 12 million. So it's pretty cool. You can check it out later if you want. But ever since I got a #1 app, everyone asks me, what's the secret of app development? What did you do different to be #1? What did you do that other people didn't do? Or what do you know that other people don't know? And people are often surprised when I answer them pretty easily. Eat right and exercise. Okay, that's normally the reaction I get when people talk about it, so let me explain what I mean by that a little bit. So, first off, when we talk about development, everything is a skill. When you go out and make an app, too many developers I see are just afraid to start. They'll look at what's on the market, they'll say, what's popular right now, Candy Crush is in, let me do some market research, I'm going to talk to some people. They're like been planning a game for months, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure if it's the right thing. And then by the time they figure out what they want, some other type of game's popular in the market, so then they want to change their mind. And they just never start actually making games or making apps. I mean, look at like what an artist does. A beautiful painting that you see. For every painting, that wasn't something that people thought about for months as their first painting. You don't see artists thinking, yeah, I really want to get into painting, so I'm going to look at art galleries and look at what ones are being selected for different art shows and then paint something like that. They just take a pencil to paper and start doodling. For every piece of art you've seen, there are hundreds, if not thousands of doodles thrown away by that artist of stuff they just started and threw away. Maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't. I mean, we look at, Leonardo da Vinci's doodles and like, oh, these are great, undiscovered works. But he didn't get that way because, he made one pieces and then a couple other doodles, right? He just kept working, he just kept iterating, he just kept making new things. So don't be afraid to doodle with your development. You should doodle with your programming. Try out something new. Start making a game, start making an app. Half finish it, move on to something else if you want to. Just start, writing code. Don't try and plan it. Don't try and look at what's out there in the market right now or what's going to be a great idea. You're not going to be good at your first app. It won't be as good as your second app. It won't be as good as your third app. So if you only have a month to say to develop, why spend a month thinking about it when you could spend a month making a dozen apps? You'll be better. But that said, I did learn some stuff from making my apps, so I have some best practices, some advice that I can give you that should help you along the way, even though practice is the best way to learn. The biggest thing I want to talk to you about today, though, is App Store optimization. Who's heard of that? Okay, some people, that's good. Biggest thing you're going to take away from this talk today is App Store optimization. This is something that every person who's doing any kind of app should know. It doesn't matter the platform. You want to have people discover your app and find it. Well, there's 3 main ways you're going to do so. Recommendations, search, and on the ranks. Recommendations you already know. This is someone reviews your app and recommends it to somebody else. This is my friend plays it and they told someone else, the viral effect. There are hundreds of other talks out there about how you optimize your recommendations, so I won't even bother touching it. You already know about this. A lot of developers laser focus in on that, though, as the way to get your app known and the way to go up the charts. But there's actually 2 other ways that people are going to find your app. They're going to search for it. They'll say, monkeys, okay, that's a cool game. Or runner games, and like, oh, okay, I'll find that. Or if you're making like a more traditional app, like podcasts or to-do lists, they'll search and then find your app in the store that way. And most people find it through the rank. #1 apps get downloaded. When you go to find a new app, you go look at the top 10 charts. Maybe if you don't like what's on the top 10 on your board, you'll look at top 25. Because you're developers, you might be interested in looking at the top 100. If you're ranked 101, your natural downloads are way, way smaller than other ones because people just frankly don't look at the charts past that point. Chicken and egg problem, I know, right? Because if you don't get downloads, you're not popular. How do you get on the charts? And then once you're on it, it's this perpetual motion machine where you're going to stay up. So that's where App Store optimization comes in, to get people to notice you ahead of time. Whenever someone goes to download your app, no matter how they're finding it, if they watched an ad and then they clicked the link, or they were recommended by a friend, right before they download, the last thing they see is your presence in the App Store. So that has to be perfect for them to download the app. Not good, perfect. When you're looking at your icon, you have to be able to recognize it from 15 feet away in just a couple seconds, to be able to see it clearly, understand what it is, understand what the symbol means. You already know this. You can talk about good icon design. There's a whole other lecture you can talk about on that. But you also have to have it stand out to your competition. I see a lot of developers, they make a really good icon, maybe their designer shows it around the company and everyone loves it, and then they put it up in the App Store and it just kind of blends into the background of all the other high quality app icons there are. If you're making a to-do list app and you're thinking, okay, how about a checkbox? That's nice, it's simple, it conveys what the app's going, you can make a really nice checkbox. If you look for to-do list apps, how many checkbox icons do you see? It's like most of them are. So you're not going to stand out compared to all the other checkboxes when you search for a to-do list app and you see that screen of 30 apps. You need to stand out with a different shape, a different color. So you need to pop, not just independently from 15 feet across the room, but when viewed against a bunch of other apps, because you will be looked right next to your competition. Your screenshots are also important. You have to be very honest about them. You can't just show an idealized view or some text. A lot of game developers specifically have this kind of sunken in screenshot, or they show like the menus. This is why I have the Temple Run as an example here. They could have very, very easily had the camera put in front of the guy and made some kind of cool Indiana Jones action shot or some like pre-rendered scene, but they just put the straight gameplay shot with the crappy water texture and all. This is exactly what the game looks like. It shows the guy running, got the people running behind him, there's coins directly in front of him in a line, and it says swipe to turn, jump, and slide. In this one icon, in a matter of a second, I know everything there is about this game. I know that I will be holding it like this, I know that I'll be running along these lines, and I'll be moving side to side, and I'll do so by swiping with my thumb. I don't need to know swipe up, swipe down, I don't need that detail, I just know how this plays. I can just feel the gameplay just by looking at it and seeing it. So, if I like it, I can download it. If they lied a bit, if they cheated and had this cool action shot or something, people might think it's a different kind of game. Somebody might think it was a third-person adventure game, something like Lara Croft, and then they download it and go, oh, this isn't what I thought, and uninstall it. And that's actually worse for you than not getting the install in the first place. It's actually better to get 1,000 installs than it is to get 10,000 installs and then have 9,000 uninstalls. You're getting players that will stick with you, players who will enjoy the game, and especially in freemium games, those are the ones that make you money. Your description, you also have to think about. A lot of developers still spend months on an app, and then when it comes to writing that App Store description, they'll spend like an hour and throw something together and be done with it. Because they don't want to write it, and they don't think about it. They think, oh, well, let's see the app. It's so cool. I have this awesome tutorial thing. But that description is the limiter between what they'll read before they download it. And more importantly, it's not just people reading it, but robots. Before anybody even sees your app, a robot's going to read it first. You need to have keywords in there. It's just like in a search engine. Having certain key phrases and certain keywords will rise you up the search ranks. If you look at the kinds of app that you're making, search for your competition, and look at the top apps, and read their descriptions carefully. Look at ones down the list, the 50th in the search results, and look at their descriptions and see what the difference is. See what the top ones have in common. You'll notice certain key phrase pop out. They'll be repeated more than once. They won't just have one special keyword at a certain time. This is very subjective. It depends on exactly what kind of app you're working on, what key phrases work, and what's good. But you have to think about your description, not just as easily readable by humans that makes it a hook, something interesting where I read this and I want to download it right away, but also readable by robots and would promote you up in the search rank. Because you can go to extreme, right? You can just have it just be a series of 500 keywords, and then a human will look at that and then close it, right? So there's a balance between those two. So don't just assume what's going to work. Study what the competition's doing. It's the best way to find out. And this also changes a lot. So speaking of changes, how is the rank determined? A lot of people think it's just downloads. The more downloads, the higher rank you get. And that's not actually true. It's a combination of about 5 different things. It's your downloads, that is a factor. Also your active installs. That's the number of people who currently have it installed on their device at any given time. Your velocity, that's how many downloads you've got this week. Ratings, both the number of ratings and the quality of those ratings. And are people actually using your app? Like if a bunch of people download it and no one runs it, you won't be as highly ranked as an app that people use every single day. So I said, speaking of approximate and changing, I have that little asterisk there because this is not set in stone. This changes dynamically. It's not only different per store, but the stores will change it because just like in search engines, people try to optimize it. They had some formula. If they said, oh yeah, it's active downloads weighted by velocity, everyone would just optimize for that and try and game the system. So it's kind of a moving target of how people do it. That means the best way to optimize is just optimize all those things. Because if you're doing good in all those factors, that's good in general. You're having a really high quality app. So how do you do that? Well, brute force is a proven method. You can be Candy Crush and you can invest millions of dollars in ads everywhere. It's just like when a new movie comes out, you see the trailers everywhere. And it's not that you watch that trailer and then you go see that movie. It's that you saw the billboard and then you saw that TV commercial and then you saw another trailer and then maybe you're going to go decide a movie and you're like, actually, I remember seeing that trailer. Maybe I'll check that one out. And it's because it bombarded you, it works. If you're just buying 2 billboards, that's not very effective. You have to kind of campaign a large area or multiple ads to make it effective. So I don't have million-dollar ad budgets. I'm going to assume you guys don't. So here's some ideas that I've come up with to do that kind of advertising without having to break the bank. First off, you want to prevent uninstalls. Simplest thing to do that is reduce your file size. Developers don't think about that, but when you're going to remove an app from your phone, you say you want to add an response, you want to add another app, and you ran out of space. What's the first thing you do? Go to all your apps, sort by size, delete the biggest one. So if you're the biggest app, you're getting removed first. If your app is awesome, I use it every day, I love it, but it's like a gigabyte, you're getting removed. I'm going to download 100 other apps that may or may not be as good. I might not enjoy any of those 100 apps as much as yours, but if you're a gigabyte, that's too much space. I'll delete it from my phone. Even when you're talking about the 3G limit, right? What is it now, 25 megabytes? Maybe more than that in some carriers? A lot of apps are right at that line. If you're 5 megabytes lower than that, you're way farther down the list of apps compared to your competition, and you'll get uninstalled much, much later. Then it's to the point where, like Blast Monkeys, at its heyday, we were proud of ourselves because we were adding more content and reducing file size. I believe the smallest we got it was 4 megabytes. And that was with like 100 levels and a bunch of different stuff going on. We kind of had to skimp on the audio a bit to make that happen. But 4 megabytes, that's so far down people's phone list, they didn't bother uninstalling us. Even if they had completed the game, then they kept it on and then we had an update and more content and they come back to it. So that's the easiest way I can think of for that. Cross-promotion as well. If you happen to know another developer, like person sitting next to you right now, cross-promote your app. It's not a matter of, it's not a cutthroat business, especially games. If I have a podcast app, I'll have one podcast app, I'll have one to-do list, I'll have one, coaching app. But games, I'll have tons on my phone. I'll be getting more and more of them whenever I want, and I play more than one game at a time. So you're not losing players if you promote other people's games in yours and then back to you. You're just boosting each other's rates up. This is how Zynga became so big. They had a big game, and then they looked at the charts and they said, this is another popular game not made by us. So we'll clone it and then cross-promote it in our game. And it cost us nothing. They converted all their players over, and then they had 2 popular games, and then they did another game, and another game, and another game. And eventually they owned so much of the Facebook market that they started selling all those players that they got for free because they were just cross-promoting in their own games. You can do the same thing with other developers. And if you're going to do any marketing at all, stack it all up at once, because you can do a little bit of test markets, you do one test campaign to see how far that goes, but if you're doing your big push, do as many pushes as you can at once. Go as big as you can, because the higher up the ranks you go, the more natural downloads you get. So the bigger the push, the higher up that ranks and the higher natural downloads you get and go up. Lastly, I want to talk about user acquisition. If you're going to acquire a user, make sure you're doing it intelligently. So you can do the math, and there's a lot of talks about that, where, okay, I have this campaign, and I get this many users from it, so it would cost me 50 cents a user to do this, $1 a user to do that. You might think, well, the winner is the 50 cents a user, right? Not necessarily the case, because if you're getting a bunch of users, say on Android, they wanted to get 10 coin in some other game by downloading you, they'll download you, immediately uninstall and go back. You didn't make money on that user. In fact, he actually hurt your rank, because it went against your active installs account, and it also, people are showing it, they're not using your app because they're downloading and not using it. So it's worse for you that they download it and immediately uninstalled. You want people who actually like your game. So maybe that 50 cent user you got will have a lifetime value of 40 cents or less. But that $1 user is someone who saw some video ad for 30 seconds and then they went to your app. Well, then they actually saw your gameplay, they liked it, they liked your app, and they wanted to download it, so they're much more likely to stick. The consumer lifetime value of that user might be $1.10 or $1.25. Well, now it's a much more clear answer. You want to go for the $1 user. So make sure you're factoring in all the factors, not just how many people downloaded my game when you're looking at different advertising options. How many people have started an app, possibly the first time, and it's this big pop-up screen that says, hey, please rate us in the store. I don't get this. So many top developers are even doing this. This isn't even like a newbie mistake. Top developers are making this mistake. They're like, oh, well, it's like the third time I open the app, it'll pop up. What's that saying is that, okay, out of all the apps on my phone right now, I want to open yours. So I click it, and I want it, I think your app is great, and I get this pop-up that says, did you really want to do that, or did you want to take 30 seconds and do something else? If I love your app, I'm like, hell no, I don't want to do anything else, and close that and go right into it. But if I don't like your app, it's okay. Maybe I'll go rate it. You're just asking for a 3-star rating or less if you do that. In Blast Monkeys, you get coin for every levels, or when you beat them, you get perfect scores. And then when you have enough coin, you can unlock the next level. If you don't have enough coin, there's a button that says get free coin. And one of the ways to get free coin is a button that takes you to rate us in the store. So people who played through the first level, didn't like it that much, quit the game, uninstalled it, whatever they did, that's fine with us. But people who loved the game, people who wanted more content, and worse, they wanted it right now, they went to go rate us. That's how we got over 200,000 5-star ratings. We didn't tell them to give us 5 stars, but we naturally selected the people who loved us the most to go rate us. You also got to use social when it makes sense. If you just have a Twitter button, you have a Twitter button, you're going to get, you can't just have, hey, advertise my game for me, and have this button. It's like, oh, hey, here's this game ad. No one wants that on their social feed. No one's going to like that. You have to provide some value, so make it a reason for them to tweet about it. Flappy Bird. I just spent 3 hours in this game, and I got 10 points, and I'm super proud of that. That was cool. That was cool to put on my social feed. That was funny. It was funny in the context of games because you fought so hard to get 10 points. In other games, 10 is nothing, right? So that's what made those tweets extra valuable, both to the developer, but also for the player. That's why the farm bill is, oh, hey, help me with my cow. Oh, hey, I just got 1,000,000 points in Bejeweled Blitz. Provide some value for the people to be social. Don't just make it, press this button to advertise for me, please. And give people an outlet for problems. If you have a feedback button in your app, you can prevent so many bad ratings. Because people just want to vent to you. They just want to tell you how much you suck. No matter how good your app is, people want to tell you how much you suck. And if you give them a way for them to do that, that doesn't involve going to the store and rating you 1 stars, that's so much better for you. Because not only will that rating not be on the store, but then you can also collect some valuable information off of them. So if you have a feedback button in the game, they say, you suck, but then you're also collecting, say, what version of the app they're using, what device they're using, stuff, maybe what part of the country they're in. And then you can look at that data and say, everyone who was on a Motorola Droid thinks the game sucks. That happened to us. So we went on Craigslist, found someone with a Droid, bought it. Oh, hey, our Box 2D physics was having a bug on Droids. We fixed it that week, emailed those people. We had an optional reply email address, and they all then got super excited. They thanked us, and they became our biggest advocates. In fact, when they found a bug in the future, they then would, oh, hey, I found this problem here. And they would do a really detailed bug report. They became our best players, and they started a relationship with us by telling us how much we sucked. Post-release content. Again, you also can't just make an app, throw it over the wall, and be done with it. We're past that era. That's how software used to work. It's how a lot of things used to work. Software does not work that way anymore. Apps absolutely don't work that way. You have to continually update them. If you look at your favorite apps on your phone right now, they were updated in the last 3 months. I guarantee it. Doesn't matter if the app hasn't changed much. Doesn't matter if it's a minor new feature. Constantly update your app. Constantly make new content. Communicate with your audience, not just one way where you blast out on Twitter, oh, hey, here's the new feature. Talk about what you're working on next. Listen to their feedback. Listen to their comments. Talk back to people individually. Respond to their emails. Have that two-way conversation. And this is a new way for open up marketing. If you're going to ask someone to review your app and you haven't updated it in 6 months, doesn't matter if you say how busy you have been trying to promote your app. I've had reviewers tell me that when a developer does that, they say, well, if you don't care about your app, why should I? Again, apps are a service, no longer a product. Lastly, don't expect instant success. A lot of people also think that, I've been working on my app, it was out in the store for 2 months and it didn't pick up popularity, so I quit. You know, it's actually really deceptive. When a lot of people who have successful apps, they'll, get up on a podium like this and talk with you, and they'll say, oh yeah, I made this much a month, or I got this many downloads, and you're like, oh, my app didn't get that many downloads. Blast Monkeys, 4 months in, we had about 2,000 active installs. 2,000. 7 months in, #1 Android game. Easy for me to say, right? Like, okay, keep sticking with it. I know it's really hard when you're in that trench, in that moment. You don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but it's not going to be successful right away. Flappy Bird, recent success. Anyone know how long it was on the App Store before it was #1? Any guesses?
A year.
8 months it was on the App Store before it hit #1. It's an overnight success to you. You found out about it overnight, but it was a slow process going up the store, and finally it hit that top 250, and then it went viral, and then it went everywhere, and then you all found out about it. But that process took a while. If I could talk to that developer, what's his name, Don, I would ask him what he did before November. That's the interesting part. It's not what analysts are talking about right now, because there's really no public data before that time, because he was out of the top 1,000 ranks. So I was going to talk about the secret of app development. What did I say? Eat right and exercise, right? How do you lose weight? Everyone knows that answer. $billion industry. Weight loss pills, personal trainers, gyms, $billion industry for losing weight. And it generally boils down to eat healthy and exercise. How do you make a #1 app? Everyone already knows how you make a #1 app. It's got to be a really compelling experience. You have to keep users coming back. They have to like it and want to rate it. You have to market it well. You have to integrate the right ads. There is no one secret thing that you need to do. There is no one trick. There is no one separation. You just have to do everything right. And that's hard. It's really, really hard. But like eat right and exercise, everyone can do it. There's no limit. There's no secret thing that you don't have. There's not even necessarily a skill set that you don't have. It's just a matter of it has to be the right combo, and you have to keep working on it. And again, your app can go from #1,000 plus to #1. All of them do so. Apps are a service, not a product. I want to emphasize this again because too many developers think of it as products, product releases, version 1.1, version 1.2, and they'll take months to develop each one. Blast Monkeys was updated every 2 weeks for over a year. That's really, really hard. I would not blame you if you don't update every 2 weeks. But if you can, that's better. So I almost want to talk for a little bit, but here's my summary thoughts. There's no secret. Experiment with new ideas, try new things. Don't be afraid to start. Everything is a skill. Just practice and iterate on it. Test with real people. I didn't emphasize this too much. If you're going to test with people, don't just show your friend. Don't just show your mom. Go out in public, just go on a street corner and get people who you would never meet socially. Any other feedback is not only not useful, it's actively against you, because your friends are nice to you, other developers have their own world and what they're thinking. You just have to get your real users' feedback with people, and that is involved with communicating. You have to actually talk to your audience, not talking at them, not have a black hole of email that you never read, but have that two-way conversation and outmaneuver your competition with things like App Store optimization. So, I don't know what we are for time-wise. Let me check. I got like a few minutes for questions if you guys have any. Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, it's about the concept of iterate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for software is like that. We have seen this with extreme programming and all the stuff. But just a couple of weeks ago, I went to another meetup, and this one, it was about user testing. And the guy, one of the conclusions that he arrived was that iteration for apps wasn't that good, because if you release your app with a first version, you will get ratings, and that ratings won't be as good as if you had already iterated over that like 3 times.
I disagree with that assessment. A lot of developers look at that peak
Can you
as.
repeat that question?
The question was that he had heard some developers say that iteration wasn't good. Most importantly, you might have a bad first impression, and with that bad first impression, people don't tend to come back to apps once they leave. But usually you don't have millions of players have a bad impression and then they leave, right? You have a small group of people. You have 10,000 people, and maybe 10,000 people don't like it and then 9,000 uninstall. That's just 9,000 people. And for every person who actually used your app, you just got 9,000 playtesters. You're never going to have that good of iteration in a closed door. You're never going to have that good of focus groups in a closed door. Iterating in public and getting in front of people is way better. And if you structure your app in such a way that you can collect those analytics and collect those feedback, you will be much, much more beneficial. So yes, there is this bad first impression thing, and yes, it needs to be good as you can make it, but the earlier you get in front of people, the better it's going to be sooner, and the net benefit is way outweighs any problems you have there.
I mean, I guess building on that question, like, what do you think about starting like in a small test market and then seeing like what the response is and then iterate it before you go to like a wider market?
Absolutely, but I'm more of a favor of get it out there in front of people. That's actually getting more and more common in the industry, like, Flappy Bird, they don't do test markets, right? He just worked on it. Minecraft, there's no test markets there. Blast Monkeys, we developed in public. Lots of top apps, they just go out there as early as possible. In fact, it's actually a very common thing for startups to just be like, let's get as many users as possible and make them as happy as possible, and then we'll figure out the product. So, I would totally recommend just developing in public. I would totally recommend public iteration, and everything that you learn, if it's like your app is totally hosed, if you do it and you iterate on it and you do your best, and then 6 months in, you're like, you know what, this app is ruined. This app, everyone's tried it and uninstalled it, can't people get into it? Make a new app. But you'll have learned so much from the iteration, because it's not just a matter of technical effort into the app. A lot of what I'm talking here is, I guess it's design, but really it's a mix of the two. It's about your monetization. It's about the business aspect of it. You can't just slap that in. It has to be done in public. You have to see what people actually like. Good questions. One more.
At what point did you decide to cross into a different platform like iOS?
As early as possible. So that's a great question, actually, because I develop for all apps, not just Windows platforms. I work for Microsoft, but I was on every platform that I could. We got on Android back in the day when it was, early, and a lot of developers, I went to a lot of meetups in like 2010 and 2011, people were like, don't be on Android, it's too small, iOS is way bigger market share, why would you be on Android? And then we ended up being the #1 app on Android and made tons of money and huge popularity, and that made us super popular on iOS. Smaller markets are to your advantage. The smaller market is less competition. A smaller market, they're hungrier for different kinds of apps. Smaller market is still millions of people who want your app. If you're talking about which one platform should I pick, no matter what you pick, it's the wrong answer. I'm a Microsoft guy telling you this. You should not only be on Windows, in my opinion. You should be on all platforms. But, if you're only on iOS or you're only on Android, you're leaving millions of people off the table. And yes, if you're not on Windows Phone, that's still millions of people on the table. We're third place, but millions of people play those apps there. And it's easier to get #1. You need less downloads, and there's less competition. It's just straight up fact. You can look at the stores and find out. And because of that, it's better, and that will lead to other people. That will lead to more innovation. You can think of it like a test market thing, right? When you are on one market, you learn a lot, and you'll help your other market and do better on. So I was also on Nook, Kindle, the Toys R Us NIMBY theme, which I've actually never seen in person. But what else was I on? There's got to be a couple others. We tried to get on BlackBerry, but they would not work with us. It was hard. But we were on every platform we could be. So I think it's time for Doris to talk, but I will come back afterwards for Q&A. So if you have more questions, write it down, and you can talk then.